One of the main reasons Chaos Warriors with Halberds were so underused before is because their stats were honestly pretty terrible. For the cost, their melee defense in particular was worse. I think it was like 36, which was one of the worst, if not the worst, for any Halberd unit in the entire game. So today, we're going to be taking a look at the Chaos Warriors with Halberds, have the melee defense buffs and bracing changes actually help them. Today, Poison Ducky Prez is going to be taking his Chaos Dragon. He's also got 3 spawns here, Power Sword Chaos Knights, Poison Warhounds, we've got some Marauder Horsemen as well. Up against Norsca, I believe this is Imperator. He's got Wulfric, the Wanderer, Horse Masters here, Beasts of Tashnar immediately getting dived by the Dragon, Marauders in the front line, Ice Trolls, very interesting choice, and Marauder Javelins. So I've talked a little bit about the Chaos Dragon Sorcerer Lord before. I'm a big fan, as the Chaos Dragon does fire damage, and synergizing with Lord of Fire, you can get some excellent value, especially against a faction like Norsca that doesn't have, or that rather has a lot of units which can be weak to fire damage. So I like that pick so far. The Halberds are just kind of moving up. And again, I mentioned Chaos Warriors with Halberds, their melee defense was poor, and Halberd units in general struggled in monster and even cab fights sometimes. Like, their best option was going up against monstrous infantry, which here they are going to be doing that as well, but they do kind of get inundated here. You can see the javelins are just shredding these Chaos Spawn here. Very unfortunate situation. Power Sword Chaos Knights had taken quite a bit of damage already, and a nice Sea Fang cutting across the line. Doesn't do too much damage because of the Chaos Warriors with Halberds armor. Of course, 100 armor is legit. Anything 90 plus is where it starts to get really good in terms of damage mitigation, and for an infantry unit, 100 armor is awesome, especially in this price range. Chaos Warriors with Halberds still don't have the best stats in the world, and their attack stat in particular is quite poor, only 30 melee attack, but a massive 19 bonus versus large means against large units they'll punch really, really hard. They just struggle pretty heavily against infantry. A nice burning head for the Warriors of Chaos here crumps this Norscan backline, and you can see with the Dragon dropping down, he just eats this Famir. I completely, did not highlight that appropriately, but yeah, the Famir just gets nommed super hard by the Dragon with a nice Kindle Flame power spike, and you can see the Trolls event sent packing for the hills. There's still a lot of HP left, potentially. They could regenerate and come back, but the Warriors with Halberds have survived just enough here. One of them also fighting Wulfric, probably generating some pretty decent value, but the armor and the extra melee defense now helps them survive in a situation like this, whereas previously they would have got crumped. Basically just always better to bring the great weapons, pretty much. But Ice Trolls here kind of getting bogged down. They, of course, are going to apply their own Frosty debuff to anything here and slow it down, but the Javelins throwing in quite effectively. Big old pitched engagement between Wulfric and the Dragon here. Both of them. Hunter of Champions being used there, and I don't think, no Cascading Fire Cloak. He didn't even bring Cascading Fire Cloak, which in my opinion is a little bit of a mistake. I'm a huge fan of that for self-buffing the Dragon. Give him some extra melee defense and armor-piercing damage, but he's going to turn up, cycle back around. Big old, Flaming Sword of Ruin, which is awesome. Gives extra fire damage, and of course with the Kindle Flame proc, that is going to be a little bit of a damage spike for these Warriors with Halberds. Extra weapon damage as well from the Flaming Sword of Ruin, so that has generated some great value. Balance of power not looking great for the Warriors of Chaos, though, even as Wulfric is broken and shattered and actually killed here by the Halberds, the Spawn, and the Dragon all together. Halberds obviously contributing majorly to that, and that immediately puts the balance of power back somewhat. There's still this massive kind of presence of Ice Trolls here, but Hounds finishing off these Horse Masters mostly. Halberds also getting in contact with those Horse Masters, and the Terror is going to be a major issue for the Norskins at this point. They do have some Chaos Knights back from route as well, kind of in the back line there, but the Ice Trolls kind of move in to blob up around the Dragon, and like I said before, this is probably a fight previously the Chaos Warriors of Halberds would do well in. Against monstrous infantry in general, Halberds were quite good, but now, especially with Terror from the Dragon, they're going to get a little bit of a supporting charge from these Marauder Horsemen. Just keep all those units routed off, and at this point, the balance of power is close for Norsca, but it's a little bit of a false inflation because so much of their stuff is kind of routing and being chased off here, especially the Trolls. If they're chased off, they're not allowed to regenerate their HP. They're not going to be getting any value in this late game here, so yeah, the Halberds are very, very low, but that extra melee defense they got would probably be the difference between them, you know, being here very low or just being completely dead, you know, at this point in the battle from damage, right? So there's a little bit of something, but a nice fireball coming in for the fire dragon. Ooh, will it make contact on a troll? Oh yeah, that's the unlucky ice troll. Just falls down from the fireball. Not to get back up, and looks like some trolls shatter there. Bunch of the Norscan units are starting to shatter. They've still got the Beasts of Tashnar here. One more unit of ice trolls. But the spawns, there's literally 3 spawn here, 2 spawn there, that are able to make contact with the Javelin Hunters and just keep them from firing mostly, disrupting their unit formation. Dragon drops down again, eats a face full of Javelins from the Horse Masters. Potentially a dangerous situation with the ice trolls kind of lurking there. But here come the Halberds, slowly maneuvering, positioning, pushing those Horse Masters away. And things are looking pretty good for Chaos here. Quick hit on the Beasts of Tashnar. They're not going to like that, as the Terror probably kicks in here. Halberds, of course, don't have their bonus, as Beasts of Tashnar count as infantry, but they get terrified. Now the balance of power finally showing a little bit in the Warriors of Chaos' favor, and then edging ever so closer back. But yeah, I have to say I'm pretty impressed. The Halberds, I'm not 100% sure if I'm sold on them. We kind of did some comparisons with a bunch of other mid-tier kind of Halberds and Spear units. I didn't save the testing, unfortunately. I'm not the biggest fan of showing testing on my channel generally, because that's not how the game works in practice. Just kind of a philosophical thing for my own channel. I try and always show things at full speed and in, you know, actual battles, because that's the way that the game is played. I always try and represent it accurately in that way. But a Norscan player is going to throw in the towel here. Very understandable. Not a lot he could do to finish off that dragon. And it was Imperator. Yeah. Well played to Poison Ducky and Imperator both. A beautiful game. And the Halberds, I mean, they did their job, more or less. They held the line and survived, and also able to dish out some damage. In particular, these guys, 1177. Really nice damage value on those Warriors with Halberds. Of course, the Dragon, Sorcerer, Lore of Fire also carrying quite a bit of damage on his back. The Knights had a really rough time, but, you know, you gotta have at least one distraction. Carnifex. Yeah, Horsemen. Very cost effective. Poison Hounds, kind of a mixed bag, but Spawns didn't pay for themselves. Tanked a lot of damage. Got shredded super hard by those Javelins, both of which absolutely paid for themselves. Wolfric probably didn't pay for himself. Yeah, only 2,000 damage value, which 1,300 damage. 13,000 damage dealt, rather. Kind of crazy that that doesn't pay for itself, but there you go. Famir got absolutely eaten by a fire dragon, which is something that can happen for Famir. They're not super fast or survivable characters. They have a decent amount of HP, but against a really concerted snipe effort, they're not amazing. Horse Masters did pretty decently, though. They're very cost-effective. In general, the high-damage kind of skirmish cav for Chaos and Norsca can be very cost-effective in the right scenario. Beasts of Tashnar also paid for themselves. The Ice Trolls, though, really rough pick. I've been seeing more and more people using the Ice Trolls recently, and I get it to a degree, but the Ice Trolls, like, because of their regeneration and base weakness to fire, they're something like 40% weak to fire damage. Like, against any faction that has any form of fire damage, I just don't see it being a great idea, especially given that Warriors of Chaos absolutely have really good fire tools, and of course the Dragon's one of them, but that's not what this is about. Let's talk about mid-tier Spears and Halberds for just a second, kind of have a little bit of a meta-analysis discussion here. We'll pull up a few that I think are kind of all contenders for the top 4 spots. So yeah, we'll start first with what I think is probably the worst unit in this class, still, even after the buffs, and that is unfortunate, but Sora Spears are probably the most situational. They do have missile block chance, and they don't have the lowest armor of anything in this group, but their stats, I believe, are the worst here. If we go ahead and compare attack and defense on Warriors with Halberds to the Sora Spears, yeah, Sora Spears, just less attack and defense. They do have the most weapon damage out of any unit here in terms of their base weapon damage. Of course, 19 bonus versus large on the Warriors with Halberds, only 16 for the Sora Spears, so that kind of evens out a little bit there with the bonus, but the stats aren't amazing. It's only 60 armor in comparison to the 100 armor of the Warriors with Halberds. HP is very comparable. In fact, Source even have a little bit more HP, 900 more. It's pretty considerable amount more, but that armor does make a pretty big difference, especially against certain types of monsters. And the bonus versus large being absolutely massive. I would say warriors with halberds, in my mind, are probably third here. They're really close, in my eyes, to Tomb Guard with halberds. Tomb Guard with halberds now, 50 armor, only half the armor, but they do have a 55% missile block chance, which in some situations is going to be better than having the armor. Also, they're undead, so they're functionally unbreakable, especially at 60 leadership. Like, units with 60 plus leadership, undead units with 60 plus leadership are almost impossible to disintegrate. So functionally, I mean, you might just take, 300, 400 damage off their base HP to account for crumbling over the course of a battle, but they have even better melee defense than the warriors with halberds, worse melee attack, but they do actually have access to attack buffs. Same can't be said of Chaos Warriors. Weirdly enough, they have zero access to attack buffs, have none whatsoever. In terms of like AoE support attack buffs that could potentially hit these halberds. Kind of an odd thing to stop and think about. But anyway, back to this comparison here. The Tomb Guard do have less weapon strength, but more models is pretty nice. And yeah, just in general, having better, in my opinion, better access to support magic, like literally just Lore of Light, is better than a lot of these other lores in terms of specifically supporting halberds, nets, and attack buff from Barona's Time Warp. Both are very good specifically for halberds. Warriors don't have that, unfortunately, so Tomb Kings I'd give a slight edge, although I'm not totally sold on that. Like, these two in my mind are very, very comparable units. The best, in my opinion, is still the Silverin Guard for a few reasons. Primarily, their defense is the best. 42 melee defense baseline, not as good, or actually the same, right, as warriors with halberds. Weapon strength is less, right? They don't have AP, but they do have 20 bonus versus large, so in terms of total damage, they're still hitting about the same, obviously less HP. That expert charge defense means they will beat a lot of infantry units if they charge them from the front. Magic resistance, like I mentioned, the magic resistance is super important for stuff like, Penumbral Pendulums, your Sea Fangs, stuff like that. And then also 75 armor, which is, good, as we've seen in many. It's better than two others that we've just compared here. And again, also having that 55% missile block chance. So kind of combining a lot of the best aspects of these different units that we've looked at, but just with the downside of not having as good of AP, but still lots of weapon damage overall. What do you guys think, though? It's kind of an interesting discussion, like mid-tier spear/halberd units. I guess, these guys, Solar Spears, don't have AP. But anyway, who's the best in your eyes between these kind of four units that I've compared here? We're going to continue to look at some of these others. I think I've covered Tomb Guard with halberds. I don't 100% remember if I've covered Solar Spears yet. I do intend to. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.